Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Now, we all know that Titanic was revered at the time for her interior design, especially in first class. These were some of the most lavish spaces to be at sea at the time. Truth is that there were other ships that were probably a little bit more grandiose and ostentatious, but Titanic dialed it back a little bit and made it a more simple, refined kind of elegance. And there's really only one place you can go back in time and experience seeing them for yourself, and that's in Titanic Honor and Glory's Demo 401. It's a absolutely spectacular recreation of Titanic's beautiful interiors, and it is completely free. You can download it online, I'll put a link in the description below. I sat down with the Titanic Honor and Glory team to take a look around some of the better known and also some of the lesser known spaces in Titanic's first class. So here, for your viewing pleasure, is a guided tour around Titanic's first class spaces. Please enjoy. So we're in this little interesting room, and there's a big old steel door in front of us. This is kind of where it started for a lot of passengers. This is one of the major entranceways for first class on B-Deck. It's one of those things that maybe shatters the myth a bit when people talk about Titanic, is that they expect everything to be wood-paneled, everything to be marble. It's funny, did anyone ever figure out why they didn't up-detail this or add any kind of flooring or anything?
There's been theories brought out that this area was utilized after the ship departed port, that perhaps they stored certain items here, like baggage trolleys, etc. And people are seeing passengers off in ports. You have a lot more foot traffic aboard the ship, so you have to have essentially canvas runners brought out to protect that linoleum. And perhaps they stored that in these offsets of the grand staircase right here.
So one of the big myths about the first class grand staircase is that it was made out of, essentially, I don't know where this myth started, but a lot of people repeat it, that the grand staircase was made out of like one piece of solid oak or something, that it was all carved and then just held in place with gravity.
You know who I blame for this myth? I know who I blame for this myth. It's James Cameron. I hope he's not listening right now, Mike. But yeah, I blame him.
There would have been steel bulkheads behind the stairs where the paintings are, and there would have been steel columns going up here. But the stairs themselves, it's made of wood and all that, but they're built around a steel frame. There's a steel frame that's kind of all built up under there inside the stairs. And
stairs themselves are steel, yeah.
Yeah, there's a framework in there, and that would have been attached to the ship. And in fact, on the wreck, you can see that some of that steel framing is still there on the lower decks. So, the idea that it would have just floated out is a little weird.
It's really, I think what I find fascinating is that this wasn't done now with technology and like all this computer stuff. This was done with like paper plans, and you just had people like, just how do you draw that stuff up back then? Like it makes my brain hurt thinking how they did that.
Yeah. As a passenger on Titanic in first class, I suppose where would you go next? I guess you'd be directed by stewards to help. Shall we go down to C deck and have a look around the purser's office and just sort of sniff that out? And I guess the first thing is we've got what looks to be one giant safe and one slightly smaller safe.
One thing that passengers had to worry about on ocean travel were thievery in their cabins. First class passengers would come with their jewels, with money, etc. when they're going east and west on voyages, and so the company always highly suggests that you deposit your valuables in the safe, because they're not liable for anything you keep in the cabin, because it doesn't lock unless you're in it. So you don't have a key to your cabin back then. So what they would do is they would go to the inquiry office first, say like, I would like to make a deposit, and then they would get, in the very older days, they would get escorted to the purser's office proper, be brought inside so they could watch their jewelry, their money be put into the safe, and then be given a receipt as to which part of the safe, which deposit box it was put into. There's even a light bulb in the safe, so when you open it up, if it's dark in there, you can see inside. As far as we know, the last time we saw it was in 2005, I believe. It's still in the ship. It's probably empty, though. The pursers most likely took everything out of the safe and put it into bags, and they were seen holding bags and bundles on deck. And I believe that they took everything out of the second class purser's safe and they combined it all together. And I think a bag of jewelry was found and raised by RMST, and it was often believed that this was the work of a theft, someone who got the bright idea of going around to cabins while the ship was sinking. But it was more likely that it was just the work of the pursers doing their duty as the ship was going down and emptying the safes.
So they're going all the way up here.
Mhm.
Entire ceiling. Yeah, it sounds stupid. Didn't realize it was that big. It's like the entire landing. It's incredible. How
Sorry,
back then
metric people.
did they get pieces of glass to fit in between the wrought iron, but also curve with the shape of the dome? Is that...
Oh, here's the fun thing.
Go ahead. Go.
As far as I know, these are single large curved pieces of thin glass that are kind of just sitting over the iron framework. It's not little pieces inserted in the ironwork. The ironwork is just sitting there as a structure, and the glass is behind it.
Right. And go and check out the gymnasium, because this is a very, very interesting space and not immediately recognizable as a gym. The only thing that stands out to me is saying, hey, this is a gym in 2023, is the punching bag.
Dr. F, I'm going to just call him Dr. Xander. You can look him up. He has created these crazy contraptions. Some make sense, some don't. For instance, the ones that are in the back inward corner are just riding machines, sometimes called the electric camel, electric horse. There's one for men, there's one for female. You sit on them, you just go up and down, you trot, basically, like you're on a horse or on a camel. Then if you go to the ones that are by the window aft, this is all one machine, and it's an abdomen rubbing machine. You stand in the machine itself, and there's like pads. I guess the pads are rubbing against your stomach, and you flip the switch, and you let it rub your abs, I guess. And behind the abdomen rubbing machine is a back rubbing machine where you lie down and you flip a switch and it rubs your back.
Yeah.
See, this is exercise, guys.
We'll head down to the Turkish bath now.
So the Turkish bath was a thing that a lot of the Victorians and the Edwardians would do on the shore. So White Star Line was like, hey guys in the White Star Line, why don't we put this on a boat? Come in here, you're going to change into a robe, you're going to put your valuables in a little locker here. There's going to be attendants depending on if you're a man or woman during the time. You would sit down in this little weighing chair and you would find out how much you weigh to begin your adventure into the Turkish bath. It would print out your weight in stones, again, I believe. And the very first room is the scariest room because it's not as scary as what it used to be, but it's still an electric bath. And electric baths used to literally be a bathtub with electric cables running into it. More or less, and you were given a charge, a current put into the water, and that was what it was. And you would sit in this water with a slight current running through it, and that was on the Adriatic, and that was a thing that they considered a health regiment. And even still, the electric bath, you're essentially sitting in what looks like a tanning bed, but you're being hit with just light bulbs. You're being bathed in lights. And then you have the lovely contraption of a shower cage, which all of the Edwardians enjoy.
It's called a needle shower, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because you don't just shower from above. The water doesn't come from just above. The water gets sprayed onto you. Well, you have several options there. The water can come from above. The water can spray all over your body from the rings, little holes in the rings, which spray all over you from all 7 of the rings. Or you can have all of it, and it can just be a deluge of water from above and from the spray around you. So you can get completely soaked from the sides and from above.
So heading into the pool, what do we got with the pool? What's interesting about the pool?
It was empty in port.
And now it's full of water.
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned in some of my videos in the past that these ships disgorged sewage directly into the ocean. And so they would only typically fill the pool at sea for that reason. And we'll come into the lounge. Probably my second favorite interior on the ship?
This room is its purpose. It's a lounge. It's a meeting room. It wasn't as popular because they introduced the first class reception room, but here you could have tea, coffee, play games, read books, socialize, just sit, relax. It connected to a substantially sized bar and pantry. This was intended to be the main meeting space for first class passengers aboard these ships. And everyone wonders what these little cabinets are for. Are they display cabinets? Are we missing like a clock or something? Are we missing some sort of mechanical equipment? But they are like display here like candy.
Well, let's go and have a look at what is probably the most almost Cunard-esque probable interior on Titanic, in my opinion.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like they ripped this out of Lusitania, but God, is it beautiful.
White.
Yeah. This is gorgeous. Where are we now, gents?
The reading and writing room was intended to be just a quiet space for, yes, reading and writing. You would come here to write your correspondence, read a book as well. It turned out to not be another popular space. It was criticized early on Olympic for being a very bright room, not because of the windows, but because of all the light fixtures bouncing off the white walls. That alcove, which could be arguably the nicest feature of the room, besides perhaps the fireplace, was going to be removed and replaced with cabins, because that's how unused the space was by passengers. This whole room had somewhat of the archaic concept of the space for the women, as the space for the men was considered the smoking room. On other ships, on other lines, the smoking room was men only. That wasn't the case necessarily on White Star Line, but even into the 20s, you would have smoking rooms which were designated as men only, with even signage outside saying smoking room is for men only. That wasn't the case on Olympic and Titanic, even though if a lady would walk in, certain men would probably get all huffy and puffy, perhaps. But this room does seem to be, I guess I'll call it a fan favorite. Perhaps for its brightness, perhaps for its use of the colors and the fabrics.
Yes, let's go and stretch our legs, shall we?
Use your scroll wheel. You can zoom in a little bit.
I was going to say, it kind of makes up for it for the fact that you have probably the best view of all the first class cabins.
That guy over there with his arms out. What's going on?
Shut up, Kyle. I can't believe you said that.
Someone should really tell the crew they're not allowed forward of that sign. Let's go and have a little look. I recall from the Ghost of the Abyss expedition that James Cameron did that these are, I think it's brass frame beds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that because the bedding was in contact with that metal, because the metal has a slight positive charge, it meant that the bedding hadn't deteriorated by about when he went. Maybe it was like 2000 or 2001.
Yeah,
and the bedding was still intact. The sheets.
There's like a I think it wasn't like sheets of the bedding, but like it was like a piece of fabric that was hanging off of I think a bedpost, and it's remarkable. It wasn't, it's not like perfectly preserved where you can see the pattern in the bed and the sheet or anything, but it's clearly distinguishable as a piece of clothing compared to everything. No, not clothing, but cloth compared to everything else.
Yeah.
And the only explanation is because it's was draped over the brass of the bed, and you have that weird reaction between the metal and what happens to the water and everything, and that's why certain would survive. They're protected by contact with the metal of the ship sometimes, or they're like in a nice little caved area of the protected from the currents too.
I was going to say another interesting fact about Titanic and first class. So we think of the absolute luxury, but of course, even in first class, you have shared bathrooms.
One other neat thing about these toilet stalls is they had this. They got creative and added this interesting little design where if the door was open, the light would be off, the little bulb in the stall. But they had the switch in the door frame where when you closed it, the light bulb would turn on. So you do your business, open the door, goes off again.
It's a very simple invention, right? Concept, not even an invention. It's just completing the circuit by just having a piece of metal hit when the door is closed. So technically that's a mistake, but we want to be able to see inside.
Let's head outside and stretch our legs a little bit for a
Okay.
little promenade.
Oh, let's go up to the boat deck.
Oh, you want to go up the boat deck?
And let's see, these are the 30-foot long lifeboats. This is boat 7 on the starboard side.
I
It's the
think
first
one of-
lifeboat to be launched, actually. So here we go.
We'll just say that the only can of worms that I'm going to just very quickly brush against is that, obviously when Titanic sank, she had just enough time to launch the main lifeboats and a couple of the collapsibles before, the other two were kind of washed off. I think a lot of us kind of agree that if she had more boats, it wouldn't have done a ton of good. I mean, maybe some would have floated off the ship and it would have helped a bit extra, but it's hard to say.
Or on the counter argument is that people would have assumed they had more time seeing more boats and not have filled them or not have gotten into the boats. Or the other boats would have gotten in the way. So many variables when you try to think of the Titanic what ifs again.
Yeah.
It's It's a very difficult can of worms, like as we're constantly saying back and forth.
And this thing with the stairs is the compass platform. And I believe it was the compass they used to adjust all the other compasses by, because it was in the center of the ship
I thought so.
and elevated away from a lot of the steel and stuff. So, they would look at that compass and they'd be like, okay, we need to adjust all of ours, the others, according to this. And that's what they did.
They were checked daily, as I understand. I think there was it a total of 4 compass binnacles on Titanic?
Yes. Quick count on top of my head: 2 forward, 1 middle, 1 aft.
Yeah.
Right.
And this being the most accurate, being away from the steel decking, is
Breeze,
getting the least
center,
magnetic
yep.
interference. But what a view, huh? Sandwiched between these two massive funnels. Because if I'm remembering correctly, there should be a little stairway right here.
There's a stairway.
Oh, look at that.
Doop, 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 doop,
Unfortunately,
doop, doop.
none of this exists anymore because this is basically where Titanic absolutely
Snapped.
broke apart. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, actually, yeah. Well, let's talk about this. The numbers listed
dun.
here on the rails.
Dun, dun,
What's all that about?
dun, 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 dun.
Well, I mean, obviously these numbers would be from 1 to I don't know how many deck chairs there were here. A lot, hundreds. Yes, and the thing is, they like to. Of course, they were scared at number 13. Humans are weird like that, and so they would avoid the number 13 on a lot of stuff, including deck chairs. There was no 13th deck chair, as far as I know. There was a 13th lifeboat, which would get confusing if you didn't have that, which almost got crushed, incidentally. So maybe they were on.
Or maybe they're right. Yeah, but
So the reason for this is really interesting, and again, it's just one of those things. Nowadays, you go on a ship, you can just go and plop yourself down on a deck chair. But back then, first day on board, you would step aboard in first class, go and visit the purser, make sure you had everything set up, dinner, you had your table. You would reserve and pay for a deck chair, and that would be your deck chair for the voyage. And so you had to have the number, and
number you wanted. Yep. This
Go
is
find it.
especially important.
yeah. Very interesting.
And
A little bit of the operational history, They've obviously become very good friends with the purser. You'd probably want a good deck chair.
There's a stained glass from the smoke room. It's lovely.
It's interesting as well that this room in particular has stained glass that obscures essentially vision into the room because it's made in the style of the London club, the gentleman's club that is admissible only to gentlemen. That is where you had some of the
Very
big
posh.
power players of the day, and it's very private, and they still exist. There's still quite a few of them in London. The Garrick Club, the Savage Club, there's quite a few of them, and very private. And it's interesting that again on Titanic they're trying to recreate that atmosphere of privacy. You can't look in.
So this painting was, I believe, it was Plymouth Harbor.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was painted by a guy named Norman Wilkinson, and he did the painting Approach for the New World in this same place on Olympic. Anyway, because Titanic sank, we the painting was lost. But years later, Wilkinson's son found his father's notes that he did for this painting, like sketches and stuff. So he was able to see what the painting probably looked like, and he did a recreation of it. So I believe that's what this painting is here. That's the recreation. So we at least have an idea of what it looked like on Titanic. And incidentally, Wilkinson is also the guy who was approached for designing the famous Dazzle paint scheme that we see on a lot of World War I ships, including Olympic.
So this is the, as I understand it, the only functional fireplace in first class spaces on Titanic. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So what did they burn here at this fireplace?
Well, I'm going to say
Money?
it wasn't wood. Money.
It
They
wasn't
burnt
wood.
money.
This is true. The ship burnt money. So
She
yes,
would have burnt
but
coal, I assume.
coal. Yes. Okay. So where do they store the coal?
I'm going to say in here.
Yes, sir. Those are two little coal boxes on either side of the fireplace. So obviously, when passengers are, probably when the ship's in port and getting ready for voyages, these coal boxes are make sure to be filled up for the voyages. So yeah, these are coal boxes on either side of the fireplace here.
First of all, we have like a display case for like all the tobacco products and other things I imagine you would be able to buy
smoke.
over there. And then there's a board on the wall. As I understand it, betting on the ship's runs was a pretty big thing back in those days. Like, how many miles is the ship going to go today? How many did it make? And people bet on that a lot, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had to do something to stay occupied.
Instead, you guys get to look at a Project 401 poster.
It's great, though.
Yeah, yeah. In real life, they would probably post up like papers saying, "Yeah, the ship went this far today. We made this many miles," and so on.
Boring notices, even the weather, things such as that.
Well, nothing changes because now there's shipboard, newsletters and things that get dropped off every morning with that kind of information, and people still take active interest in where they're heading and how far they've gone. And
Indeed,
it's funny
yep.
what has remained. You've got the Veranda Cafe and the Palm Court Cafe, which are almost identical, but one becomes popular with women and children especially.
Mhm.
And I understand it's not this one
It's not this one, no.
because of the smoke.
Essentially, yeah, it's the one that's pretty isolated on the starboard side, and so it's the one that is the smoking one, the one that where you can smoke in, which is where you are now. That is popular because smoking was a big deal back then. More people smoked, and it's this one where everyone would want to go to.
Oh, so this was the more popular one.
This is the more popular one, yeah.
Ah, interesting. What I do like about this kind of stepped promenade end here for first class is that this looks down onto third class. But what's hilarious is that's the second class promenade up there. So it's like first class is the focal point.
Yeah.
Let's head down to the restaurant. In the case of the restaurant, well, first of all, there's a quick thing. That thing at the front of the room is not a bar.
It's not a bar, no.
It's a buffet.
It's a buffet. But not a buffet as in, come on, kids. Let's get dressed. We're going out to Old Country Buffet. And after church, we're hungry. That's not what a buffet is. In the sense of the word. A buffet back then is just a display bar, and it'd be basically food items could be put there. It's more like a sideboard area. Food. I've seen photographs of this entire like display on other ships of a similar room with confectionaries, and that they made for events and such, placed on here for display. To show off the skills of the bakers, and we'd have racks of meats and everything. But it's not a buffet where you'd walk up and make take your food selections like you're on board a cruise ship today. So the name is a little bit disingenuous to what's the common viewer might think of today. Again,
if you ate in the saloon, is included in your ticket, but you didn't really have many options. In the a la carte restaurant, you had more freedom to order from a wider menu of
The Ritz,
stuff.
yes, right.
And
A la
you
carte,
could also,
a la carte meaning
yeah,
like on the side. I'm gonna
yeah,
order.
yeah. You could come here. You could take your meals at more options at any time, as I understand it. Because that's the other thing with the dining saloons is that there were set times to go and eat these meals.
Right.
And here you could come up anytime you wanted and when it was open. And yeah, and you'd have to pay for it here. You
You did,
paid for your
yes.
food if you came up here. It was it was basically it's a Ritz. It's a fancy restaurant on the ship, and it was ran pretty much as a separate business by a separate staff. And
Yeah, it was a contract.
yeah, they had its own kitchen, its own galley, and its
Mhm.
own restaurant manager, Gotti. And it's yeah, it was his own business. And apparently, if you took all of your meals in here exclusively on the trip, you'd get part of the refund. You get your ticket partially refunded.
Does anyone need a haircut?
Oh
Yes,
yes, let's go
actually.
down to the Barber Shop. If they wanted to shave or just get their hair cut, obviously, this is where they would do it, right? They'd sit in these chairs, they'd cut their hair, or they would use the barber would do the shaving, right?
Yeah, the barber would do the shaving. You don't go here and shave yourself.
Of course, one of the interesting things found floating in the debris field after the sinking is this barber pole, no?
Mhm.
Has
The
that
barber shop,
resurfaced?
Mhm.
Pardon the pun.
And that's because when the ship broke apart, this area, this staircase was right in the middle of where the entire midsection of the ship just kind of fell apart as it split in two. So all of this got just completely shattered into thousands of pieces and exposed to the open ocean and just broke apart. So there's a lot of stuff in here that would have just it doesn't exist on the wreck anymore. It's some of it,
Yeah.
like this bark pole, it just floated out of the ship.
Because it's made of wood.
Mm.
It's not like a moving barber shop pole that you see with the one that rotates around.
What's on the other side of the stairs there? Another door.
This is good though, because this actually does blend into what life was like for first class passengers, because typically you weren't traveling alone. You had somebody with you. A Lovejoy, if you will.
A Lovejoy, or a Trudy, or your kids. I also believe your children, the first
And
class
this is-
children, ate here.
Yeah, and this is where Lovejoy and Trudy would eat.
Mm-hmm. And Rose's mother's maids, who she sends down to warm up the heaters or whatever, and then they die. But yeah,
A surprisingly comfortable space.
yeah. We have little to no idea besides just that it had like oak and white paneling and some chairs like this. So this is an interpretation of it based on like other ships and some design. We have little to no idea besides just that it had like oak and white paneling and some chairs like this. So this is an interpretation of it based on like other ships and some design. I mean, when I interpreted this space, I took an Olympic panel that we had from Hawthwhistle from the paint factory. When Olympic was scrapped in the 30s, her paneling was sold and spread across the United Kingdom, essentially. And one panel, that panel that's like right in front of you, Mike, that's kind of funny, right there with that little wall socket, that panel has been a mystery for a long time to us. And we kept looking at it and thinking, it's not from any. It was just sold again on like eBay or somewhere, stripped of paint. And we looked at it and we thought like it's not from any stateroom. Where is it from? Where could it possibly be? We know it's Olympic because it was at the paint factory. So I tried to interpret some room that it could be, and I threw it into the maids and valet saloon after looking at other ships, and lo and behold, this is what we've come up with.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we get new videos out weekly. If you want to support my work and get really cool perks like behind the scenes and early access, please visit my Patreon in the link in the description below, or sign up as a YouTube member. Come and join the crew. As always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time.